Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Alive Design Roundtable. Nice to see everybody. I'll
Hello.
introduce you, and today we're going to talk about the power of thought. So there's some ruminating that might happen at the end of the year, and as we get together with relatives and maybe close out projects at work. So we'll talk about the power of our thoughts. But before we begin, let's meet who's joining the roundtable today. Brian, where are you at?
So I'm in Vietnam. Yeah, co-founder of Life Design with you.
Hmm?
Looking forward to talking about the topic.
Oh, cool. Good. And Jonathan, in a room so bright you must wear shades. Where are you at today?
I like the shades. They're aren't they? They look amazing. Um,
Oh,
that's Santa Rosa, California, like 45 minutes up north from San Francisco. So for the ones that do not know, that's the area that I'm currently living at.
very good. Surviving the tsunamis and the earthquakes, I see.
Oh my God, it's all, don't believe all you hear about. It's like
Well, Tanya, for the first time you're joining our roundtable. Welcome to Alive Designed and to the roundtable. Where are you hailing from today?
Yeah, thanks. I am in Twisp, Washington, which is in the
TWISP.
Mhm.
Oh, very
So,
good.
yeah, Methow Valley. Look it up on a map.
Oh, yes, I promise, or Google will tell me. Wonderful to have you here. And Dean, where are you hailing from today?
I am just outside the bustling metropolis of Lexington, Kentucky.
Oh, nice. Do you have any snow on the ground in Kentucky?
Not a flake.
Not a flake.
We have had two snows so far, but they have evaporated almost as soon as they fell.
Oh, okay.
It's very interesting. We are far enough. uh, Lexington's about two-thirds a Midwestern city and about one-third a Southern city.
Oh,
But we're far enough south that there is like a significant difference in our winters between, say, here and this middle of Ohio or somewhere.
oh, very good. Well, if you start to develop a little twang, we'll know that the southern part is catching up with you.
Well, it's you hear it everywhere here.
The twang, very good. Okay, well, I'm in Austin, Texas, and I'm so pleased to have all of you here today. Let's go to the slides. I know this is everyone's very favorite part. And now I'm just remembering. Okay, I hit share and I go to the slide. Share. Doo, doo, doo.
there
There's
we
nothing
go.
to show. Well, that didn't work. Let's try again. Okay, share. And oh, I don't know what happened there. My PowerPoint went away. Okay.
On the meantime, does anybody knows if KFC actually comes from like Kentucky or is like a
It
myth?
does.
You have a Kentucky person here who might be
It
able to
was
tell
yes,
you.
it was started in Colonel Sanders started it in 1956 or something. I can't remember, but he started it in Hazard, Kentucky, which is
Ah,
south of Lexington,
okay, makes sense.
southeast. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Oh, I think it showed up this time. Is that?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay. Brian and I had a co-working session and we came up with pictures. Okay. I think this is a decent picture of negative thoughts. I think they have different colored string over this person's face.
Fusion.
So, and then I like this happy picture. I'm wondering if he's so pleased with his new glasses. What do you think? I
Well,
think
just like Jonathan, you know.
I think it's just like, check out my shades. This is the best day ever. Okay. The power of thought. And I'm going to move my little thing over here. We'll start with negative thoughts because that's generally where people go. Positive thoughts are not a problem that need addressing. So, in the show notes, we'll have links to the research so people can go look up Psychology Today and Harvard Business Review and the assorted places that we got this research and look for themselves. But here's a summary. While common thoughts are negative, unwanted thoughts can prevent us from enjoying experiences, distract us from focusing on what's important, and drain our energy. So it's useful to have some strategies to manage negative thoughts when they arise. You can learn to replace negative or distorted thinking patterns with thoughts that actually help. This can make a huge difference in your day-to-day happiness and peace of mind. So comparison sickness is a thing now that we have social media. So limit comparing ourselves to other people or comparing our lives to some ideal or perfect life. That can be helpful. Ask yourself the Byron Katie question, is this true? Whenever you have a distorted thought, stop and evaluate whether it is accurate. Sometimes it's not. Disrupt binary thinking, seeing everything as one way or another without any in between. Check yourself. So would you speak to a friend the way you're talking to yourself right now? Sometimes people say, I would never talk to my friend the way I talk to myself. So there's a clue to maybe shift that. Okay, positive thoughts. When confronted with distressing or challenging situations, people with a strong ability to self-regulate can maintain a measured outlook. People with good self-regulation skills can still feel sad, angry, or stressed during difficult times, just like everyone else. So it doesn't take those feelings away, just gives you a way to manage them. I actually had a 5-year-old a couple of months ago tell me, I'm not regulating very well today. And I thought, therapy speak has now extended into elementary school. I'm not regulating very well today. When you face stressful situations, you can tap into feelings of peace and satisfaction to help you self-regulate. Try to relax by taking slow, deep breaths, counting to 10, or taking a walk. So just kind of shifting where your attention is in the moment. And here are the tips. Practice mindfulness. You can appreciate the simple pleasures of life. Focus on gratitude and appreciation. Write a daily list of everything in your life for which you are grateful. Remember an intensely positive experience. So that's a quick way to change the channel from negative thoughts, is to remember something that was amazing. Write about your most positive or happy, vivid memory. Savoring the present moment. So that's a kind of mindfulness. Focus on small things like the flavor of your coffee, the sound of a bird chirping, the comfort of your bed, listening to your favorite music, Christmas cookies, the little things. Or pay someone a compliment. Simple, honest generosity in speech lifts everyone's mood. It's free to do. Pay someone a compliment. Okay, finally, spiritual thoughts. So I love this picture of this woman here. I'm wondering, is it windy and cold while she's sitting there? I don't know. If it's sunny.
She's so spiritual, she doesn't notice.
Yes, that's right. She's communing with God, and the weather has no effect upon her. Though she's not wearing shades, so Jonathan, we might need to get in touch with her. The Oxford definition. Go ahead, Dean. Did you have a thought? No.
I didn't say anything.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Spirituality, according to the Oxford definition, is the quality of being concerned with the human spirit or soul as opposed to material, physical things. It may or may not be formally related to religion or your faith. There are some people who identify as spiritual, but not as religious. Some can feel spiritual towards goals in life, while others can feel spiritual towards social responsibility. So the definition is wide open. Some may feel spiritual about relationships with everyone around them, or spiritual about self-care and self-love. Spirituality typically has something to do with your sense of peace and purpose. However it manifests for you, spirituality is connected to your happiness and your heart's desires. So here's some quotes that you can consider when it's time for spiritual thought. You're changing the channel to a spiritual thought. From Deepak Chopra, awakening is not changing who you are, but discarding who you are not. From Paul Coelho, I think is how you say it. I understand once again that the greatness of God always reveals itself in the simple things. From Carl Jung, and I think I say that wrong, Dean. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you really are. Is that quote from Angela? I don't know. It says here it's from Carl Jung. And finally, from the great C.S. Lewis here as we approach Christmas season, the great thing to remember is that though our feelings come and go, God's love for us does not. So some spiritual thoughts to contemplate if you need to change the channel. And now to the best part, the memes. So I was thinking of Zian as we pulled this meme. An overactive mind is the symptom of an unchallenged body. So when you get the tip of take a walk, or, change the channel by engaging your body in some activity, I think there's truth in that. From Reddit, a woman says, hold on, I'm thinking. And then in smaller print, not a single coherent thought in here. So, because they say I'm thinking, maybe no thinking is actually happening. I like this bottom one. You spend most of your life inside your head. Make it a nice place to be in. So if you're just rinsing, repeating negative thoughts, change the channel. Make the inside of your head a nice place to visit. So at the very top, this is like printed on a napkin. You're a ghost driving a meat-coated skeleton made from stardust, riding a rock hurtling through space. Fear nothing. So there's a perspective for you. And then last, two monks walking through the wood. The question is not, what can I do to feel better? But rather, how do I stop feeling my own suffering? So there we go. Stop the share. So I think when we ruminate, we are feeling our own suffering sometimes. And it feels like, for me anyway, well, if I keep thinking about this, my thoughts will make it better. Or I'm a good person because I'm trying to solve this difficulty. And sometimes I'm making a mountain out of a molehill in my intense desire to, I must solve it. I must think my way through it. So I'm looking for thoughts and feedback about the power of thought. Brian, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a big topic. There's a lot we can get into. So,
I have a cookie. I have time. It's okay. Go ahead.
yeah, okay. Um, so yeah, the power of thought, I mean, you can look at stuff like invention, economics, politics, science, academia. You can go that direction and all the developments that happen there. That's obviously very powerful. Um, One thing I find interesting, I've been watching some of RJ Spina's stuff. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. I know, Mom, you are.
No, no.
He's kind of a spiritual, like meditation type guy. Um, he has kind of a process I would almost call mental magic, which I find really interesting. This is something you can do with your mind. I think there's a lot of unexplored things we can do with our minds. So I want to bring this up. So one like trick he uses for meditation is he'll be like, okay, imagine you have no past. Imagine you have no future. You just got here, bam, you're in the present. Then just be there. And it's kind of a way to snap yourself into meditation.
Mm.
There's certain like tricks like that you can use with your mind. And I think that's very interesting. And I think it's good to be aware of that. Yeah, I mean, you can look at all the powerful, amazing things mind has done, but mind can also be your enemy. It can also be a trap. When you look at Eastern, religion and philosophy, a lot of it is about transcending the mind, trying to get to higher states of consciousness that sort of go past where mind can go. So we can talk about that. I think changing your story is really interesting. Changing the story you tell yourself about life, changing the story you tell yourself about reality, about other people, about yourself. I think there's a lot of deep work people can do there. That's one way you can use your mind, either to be your friend or to be your enemy, depending on
Mhm.
the stories that you're telling yourself. I think that's good for people to look into. Another thing is changing your definitions. So one idea is that events in life are sort of like neutral props. This is something Bashar talks about a lot. So it's a lot of the meaning that you feel in life actually comes from the way you define things.
Mhm.
So if you learn to change your definitions, you can kind of change the meaning
Mhm.
of what life is to you. I think that's interesting. Like just the way you define any given moment you're in. Like what's your definition of that? What do you believe that is? If you change that, it changes the whole context, it changes the whole meaning of things. So that's an interesting way to use your mind. I also think people sort of, you kind of have to find the right way to make the mind work for you. I mean, you can use your mind to be like kind of a comedian. You could use it to be like an academic. You could use it to be like an engineer. You kind of have to find like what's the right gear for your mind to be in that really works for you in your life. Because there's a lot of different ways it can go. Um, you could use your mind to be more of like a social person, like nurturing, cultivating relationships, like which there's so many directions. So what kind of works with your natural sense of happiness and your natural temperament? Like how deep into each one of these directions do you want to go? I think it's good to look at that. And you talk about kind of replacing negative thoughts with positive thoughts. I think it's also good to ask yourself the question, what is positive about this negative thought?
Mhm.
Because there's positive and potentially negative aspects to everything. So that's another way for people to kind of get themselves out of a rumination phase if they're stuck on,
Mhm.
thinking in negative terms.
Mhm.
One way to kind of get out of it is say, well, what's actually positive about thinking this way? Because there's always some kind of benefit you're getting out of it if you continue to choose to do it. A lot of times there's like a secret payoff. Um, yeah, and I think sometimes we label things in a different way as opposed to what they are. So like someone could believe they're trying to solve a problem, but they're actually really ruminating, But like the way we label things, you might be kind of off. So it's good to like question yourself sometimes and be like, is that really what I'm doing here? Or maybe am I doing something else?
Mm.
So that's what I would say. I'm just bringing up all those topics so people can jump in and,
Cool.
bounce off that if they want to.
Thanks, Brian. No, that's
Yep.
great. Hey, Jonathan, I'm thinking of the Sadhguru quote that you sometimes, we're not the body, we're not even the mind. And so, but we have a mind. You can't remove it. There's no doctor you can go to say, I'm done with this mind. Would you take it out of me, please? So we have to work with the mind to some extent. Do you have some thoughts on the power of thought?
Of course, I have more. I will say, let's say, I am in this lifetime. I am 31 years old, right? So I will say at least 2/3 of this lifetime, I have used my mind in a very destructive, ridiculous way. The reason being is because growing up, nobody taught me how to use it. Uh, Whenever I asked like any question related to the mind, the teachers will not know how to answer my questions, and they will refer me to the books. Let's keep in mind, I'm talking that I grew up in a third world country where there was no access to certain information. Even if they didn't know, they were not going to blandly say like, I do not know, because they were going to be ashamed. I do not know how to teach you how to. Yeah. So, anyways, when I came in contact with certain information, and also forget about the information, when I became actually aware of how everything was like reality, paying attention as reality as it is, I started coming in contact with all the information that I needed. So, for example, I ended up learning that mind is divided. Obviously, we have the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and all different levels of mind that I was not even aware of. But let's just keep it simple. Let's just talk about like conscious and subconscious mind. So even if you put all your effort into I want to do this consciously, we're talking about there is like 98% of you that is completely asleep as mind and working against you on every single possible way you can fucking think of. So that being said, it's not easy, right? Because you have to pay extreme attention, and there are ways. I'm sure there's all kinds of ways to access the subconscious part of you so that you can make the job easier. One of the things that blew my mind was when I was in the ashram at Isha in India. It blew my mind how they think of mind, because when I used to think of mind, I imagine like the brain, and then I used to divide it like, here's the brain, I will cut it in half, then I have conscious mind, subconscious mind. Now, these guys think of mind as like your gut is part of your mind. Your fucking toe is part of your mind. Pinky is part of your mind. So once you are actually even more conscious that every single part of you is mind, your mind changes, doesn't it? So yeah, it's been a journey, but there are so many different ways. There's not only one correct way, because for each person has a very peculiar way to like absorb information. Like I have one way, but my ways for some human may not work. They have different ways, but the whole point is that negative thoughts are obviously easy because we are programmed since we were born for failure. And that is something that if you haven't ever put that into like the top of your mind, like, was I programmed for failure? If you think the answer is no, you're fucked. So you better make sure that you pay attention to that one. That's all I will recommend when it comes to the start of changing from negative to positive.
Okay, very good. Well, I appreciate your thoughts about that, and the Indian perspective that you have a mental energy body, that it's not located just in your brain is definitely a shift in how you perceive, mentation. How about you, Tanya? You want to give us some thoughts on thought?
That's really interesting. Yeah, I would have to agree with Jonathan that the subconscious is really powerful, definitely. I lived in an ashram too, and there was, this limb of yoga called Raja Yoga, which was the power of thought and positive thinking. And
Royal yoga.
yeah, and I'd have to say, I think it's definitely trying to be at war with the mind is not the way to go. That's kind of how I thought, like, "Oh, I'm going to conquer the mind," made it worse, it just got stronger. And so, and it's interesting, like in my experience with going through a dark night of the soul, at that time, and if you find yourself in that process, it's like positive thought's not going to help you. It's kind of like no amount of prayer, no amount of like positive thinking or anything. It's like, which was interesting because I was so used to being in the doing of things, like, and it was only until I chose to completely surrender my life that that dark night ended. So it's interesting how there can be this paradox, right? And so, and it brought me that quote that C.S. Lewis that you mentioned is really true. It's like in the bigger picture of things, like even if you are having, let's say, negative thoughts and whatnot, like there is this ever-present love that is in you, around you, always with you. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to prove yourself.
There's no qualifying.
Yeah, but yet at the same time, and after going through that experience, I think, the mind is always there. It's still there. You can't get rid of it. And so, yeah, I think that self-inquiry is definitely like probably the most powerful tool or process you can use. Like Brian, I like that idea of, you know, pretend you don't have a past or a future, or just questions that kind of can pierce through to make the untruth collapse, So I had an experience recently that I found myself feeling triggered by what somebody said, and I thought, oh, how dare they say such a thing?
Yes.
I should get angry, and I should,
Mhm.
shake my finger, and but I had enough sense of awareness, which I think just comes with practice. Like being aware of your thoughts is kind of the first step, like to be able to observe the thoughts.
Mhm.
When I observed this within my body and this, like the mind being activated and ready to like lash out or criticize somebody, I asked the question, well, who is the one that's angry?
Mhm.
And so when I asked that question, the anger disappeared. I'm like, oh, it's, you know,
The anger is optional. Mhm.
it's optional. Like, oh, who's the one that's angry? And when you look, you're like, oh, there's nothing there,
Mhm.
Um,
Okay,
so
who's your friend? We need to know the tabby friend.
yes, this is Tiger, and he is so
Well, are you
cute.
sure he's not a lion?
He is, every time I sit here, if he's in the room, he's gonna sit on my lap.
Oh, he knows his good spot. That's lovely.
So, so yeah, that's kind of what I have to say about that. I think that, and the other thing too, I think, I had a conversation with somebody about, spiritual bypassing, which I think positive thought can kind of, you can find yourself in that. Like
Mhm.
she had described this, that at one point, in her journey, she was like, I was writing positive affirmations, 500 times a day. And quite honestly, it never did anything because I had all this subconscious programming that I wasn't really dealing with. Like,
Yes,
yeah, programs like what Jonathan's talking about, all the programming that we've inherited from our family, our ancestors,
the
etc.
TV. Mhm.
PV, it's all around us all the time. So, but yeah, definitely cultivating awareness and the ability to observe the mind, and then to choose
Mhm.
that to know you have free will and choice at that point to choose. So
I
yeah, that's
think
what I.
we can feel so subjected to something sometimes that we forget we have choice. Wait, we could change a channel. Like I could decide to have this be different. I don't have to subject myself this. Brian mentions how at the heart of the problem usually is the solution. How is this problem serving me? And so I would argue that your friend who wrote affirmation after affirmation and said this isn't working for me, that was the first step to her solution.
Mm,
Identifying, okay, I'm not believing the affirmation, so I'm wasting my time. I need to explore further. Like there has to be something else. So that's actually an upside. If the affirmations have worked, great. If they don't work, great. Find the thing that works. You keep looking. Um,
mm,
so Dean, I'll come to you, but I'll reference the dark night of the soul and that sometimes people are in such a state that positive affirmations or just while you may mentally realize that there's a possibility you could take charge of your thoughts, you can't do it right now. Either you're so emotionally involved or you haven't built a practice around it. I once had a phone call from someone that was referred to me, and he gets on the phone, he's driving his car, and a young man, maybe 30, and he's not happy in his life. He doesn't know if he wants to talk to a coach or whatever. So I said, well, tell me what's going on. It's a little weird that he's driving, but sometimes it's like, I'm not going to take this call too seriously. So I'm going to be doing something else while I talk to you on the phone. You're like, okay, well, this friend referred him, so I'll talk to him. Tells him about his job. Job's okay. Broke up with his girlfriend, but she wasn't that great a girlfriend. He's probably drinking too much. I'm like, okay. And he said, but my biggest problem is when I get in the car, I have this repeating thought that I want to drive into a bridge abutment. I keep wanting to drive the car into where I crash and I don't survive. He's driving the car while we're talking. And I'm like,
He has to make sure he doesn't use his seatbelt before conversation.
so I said, well, right now we're going to change the channel. So I want you to pretend that stick shift, put your hand on the stick shift, pretend it's a remote control for the TV. If it was a remote control, could you click the button to change the channel? Yeah. All right, I want you to click the button on the drive shaft on the where your hand is in the car. and you're going to tell me your best childhood memory. But honest to Pete, he's driving the car and telling me, when I get in the car, I want to kill myself with the car. Like, wow, this went someplace fast while he's driving. So we don't know where we find clients, right? We don't know, are they in the pit of hell? Are they just needing to learn the skill? Do they need to talk to Jonathan about, alchemical hypnotherapy and just dive into the subconscious and rearrange the furniture? What needs to happen? But all of us are in different places. There is a solution for everyone. And so with that side note, Dean, why don't you share
Yes.
your thoughts? Sorry about that.
No, there's so much. Where to even begin? I think let's begin with your client who wants to drive into an abutment.
Okay.
I don't know if I would do this right at that point, or if I would try to work into it more gently. It would depend on how things felt to me. But my ultimate response to him would be to want to say, tell me what it is you just lied to me about.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because nobody has a decent job, just broke up with a girlfriend, which he thinks is a good thing, does not really have a drinking problem, and is obsessed with killing himself. So whatever's going on, when he says to me, my life is great, except I just keep having these obsessive thoughts about killing
Recurring thoughts
myself.
when I get in the car.
Right. And those recurring thoughts are coming from something you are not being honest about. Or maybe it's in your unconscious and you haven't yet brought it up. Okay. So
you're not telling yourself the truth. So you're not
yes,
telling me the truth.
right. And so the truth, but the truth is a really hard thing to kill. And it wants to make itself known, even if it does it in this weird way. Right. Like trying to say to you, hey, guess what? You're suicidal. Right. So I think so many things have been said. So a few thoughts that occurred to me. I think the first thing that I think is often helpful for people, and others have touched on this, is to think about whether you are in your thoughts or outside of your thoughts. So I remember reading a really profound saying, I think, from in the Zen tradition, which is, you are the mountain, not the clouds. And ultimately, you're not even the mountain. You're the thing watching the mountain and the clouds. But the point is that it's very easy to be identified with our thoughts and to sort of experience them as an all-encompassing reality, and to see them as to see them as truth necessarily, and to see ourselves as reacting to that truth. Okay. But what it means to be outside your thought is to have that ability to say, do I really want to drive into this abutment, or is that trying to tell me something? And so you get a little bit of awareness and distance from your thought in a way that allows you to not think of it as you, but to think of it as an object that you can in some way scrutinize or reflect on, right? And so getting just even that little bit of space, I think, is really helpful. And I think things that are really helpful for that are just a variety of practices. Prayer, meditation, journaling, I think, is great for that. The mindfulness habits that you mentioned. So that's one thing. I think you've got to find a way to regard your own thoughts as something other than a direct transmission of truth all the time. I think too that it's really helpful to think about, just even to define rumination. And I would define rumination as repeated painful thoughts that are a result of your trying to think to solve a problem by thinking that can only be solved by action you are afraid to take. Right. And so that rumination is sort of like the thing that your client was talking about, repeated thoughts, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's important for people to be able to distinguish between rumination, where you're, in a sense, trying to solve a problem that can't be solved except through action,
Mhm.
and what is really another another phenomenon altogether, which is the facing of painful or difficult truths about yourself or your life, which might be thoughts that hurt you, but they are, in a way, they're like the pain of weightlifting.
Oh.
Right?
Mhm.
Weightlifting also hurts, but it's the pain of growth, and I think being able to distinguish between those
Mhm.
is probably useful for people. And
Okay.
this is the last thing I'll say is that, and because others have touched on it, I do think that there is a deep structure to our thoughts that is programmed into us before we even know it.
Mhm.
And that you, like you said, you can write down 500 affirmations a day, but
Mhm.
if your deep structures of your thought are such that I'm not very good, people don't like me,
Mhm.
I'm bad, et cetera, all those affirmations are working at too shallow a level to really get down into the unconscious structures
Mhm.
that bring all that up. And one other thing, and I'll relate that to rumination in the sense that, and also to what Jonathan was saying about your mind just not being your brain.
Mhm.
Well, oftentimes this kind of rumination, I think, is just your nervous system trying to tell you that you do not feel safe. It's
Mhm.
like an alarm going off.
Mhm. Mhm.
So what do you need to be honest with yourself about that you are experiencing as a threat?
Mhm.
Like, and maybe it's that maybe it's that you have there are genuine threats around you, or maybe it's just that deep down that you are irresponsible and you spent too much of the rent money, right?
Mhm.
And there may be that you need to make changes,
Mhm.
or it may be that there are other kinds of genuine threats arising from other people. But
Mhm.
one way or another, it's helpful to know that your alarm is going. It's helpful to know what your alarm sounds like.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't. And so they
Yes.
get caught up. So they instead identify with the thought. Why am I thinking about driving into this abutment? Well, why is your alarm going off?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's probably enough from me because I could go on, but I
I really,
wanted to say this with you.
I really think it's good to encourage people to explore coaching, whether they're involved in therapy or not. It's good to realize help is available.
Mhm.
So, whether you refer someone to a suicide hotline or whether you just say, let's go over the top 10 negative thoughts. I'm going to write them down. Go.
But
Okay, now
that's actually
let's
good.
examine which of these are true. Well, that's
Mhm.
not true. Oh, okay. Well, this is patently not true. So maybe you should stop saying it. Okay, what's the next one?
Right.
And teach them how to kind of unpack that unconscious, repetition. And
And
I
as coaches, I think it's a part of the skill of coaching is to have some sensitivity to what the client can handle any given moment, right?
absolutely.
So you might have a person who's just so distraught that all they can do is a gratitude journal. Okay, if that's what you need, is let's start there.
Yeah.
But if you need some way of really drilling down into your unconscious being, we
Mhm.
could work on that. But part of it is just being sensitive to what that person can handle.
They have a saying in therapy that people come and they present this challenge. And then what you're going to work on is going on back here.
Mhm.
Like my job is fine. I broke up with a girlfriend, but I'm fine. Why do I want to kill myself in my car? And so it's like, okay, let's just go to the thing. Let's find
Right.
the thing. But we shield ourselves from looking at the thing. So now we're asking somebody else to look inside and say, can you tell me the part that the room that the lamp is not switched on? Like the part I'm hiding from or can't see or
Mhm.
ignoring or refuse to believe about myself, but maybe it is in fact true. And so I know all of us engage in some sort of collection of practices that allow us to question our thoughts, engage in prayer, meditation or mindfulness, journaling, so that we can keep on top of what's going on and keeping this place a nice place to visit, a nice place inside our heads. So, yeah, there's a lot about the power of thought. And I do like Sadhguru's, quote about we're not the body, we're not even the mind, to remind ourselves that, there's bigger things going on with our heart, with spirit, with, the relationships we have with God and the people in our lives,
That
and what's
w-
going on in here.
we
So,
are spiritual beings living in physical bodies,
yes.
which this reminds me, which is related to the other day, my older brother, he was saying something along the lines of, hey man, I'm so scared of dying of an ailment, and like I'm so scared of like it's gonna be horrible. Imagine, he was like using his negative thoughts, It was like, imagine if you get like to this age and then you have to like die over a period of time. I was like, brother, what kind of brother you think you have? I will not let you die I will not let you suffer for that long. I will I will make sure that you don't suffer. So I told him,
Your
I'll kill
suffering is
you.
short.
Yeah, I told him, we go to other country, I'll kill you fast. So you won't suffer. I said, you are relieved from that thought. Like now you cannot suffer from that. Oh, because in his experience, it was a horrible thought. Like, like imagine dying over 10 years. I was like, no, no, no. I'm not going to let you do that in a hospital. I'm like, I'm taking you to some other country. I will kill you personally because I'm your brother and I love you. And then you don't have, now I said, you are relieved. You don't have to think about this ever again. And then he was actually relieved. He was like, no shit, this one he will actually do it. And he felt right.
Oh, the love of a brother.
It's a loving process,
Fear not. Oh, goodness. Well, let's go around the horn for some final thoughts. And then if you're up for it, share something you're grateful for as we close out 2024. Brian, would you like to begin? And how do we get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I think everyone brought up some good points. I want to add one concept is that your thoughts aren't necessarily personal. So one theory is that your brain is more like an antenna
Mhm.
and it taps into like a field of mind, and basically whatever radio station you tune into, that's the type of thoughts you get. So if you think of it in that kind of context, it becomes easier to detach from, your thoughts, because it's more like frequency bands of mind or consciousness that you're sort of plugged into. Yeah, that's one thing to consider.
Mhm.
And the other thing with your client who wanted to like crash his car, one possibility is, it might be sort of like almost like a dream logic, like, sometimes like when dreams give people messages, there's a certain logic to that where like the dream's communicating with you, but it's not communicating directly. Maybe that feeling is telling him he needs to make a big life change.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And bubbling up from the subconscious, it's kind of in the unconscious's language, it's saying you got to do something completely different, man. Like it's not working. You could interpret it as something like that if he's not actually like actively suicidal, like trying to kill himself throughout the rest of the day. It could be something like that. Yeah, so that's mainly what I wanted to add. But yeah, you can reach me at alifedesign.org.
Yeah, /Brian. Yeah, and your social medias are there. So do you have a thought about gratitude? Anything you're grateful for? I think you're
I
like
am
Vietnam.
grateful.
I don't know.
I'm grateful for cheap prices in Vietnam, good food, great pool halls. That's what I am grateful for.
Yes, the land of great pool halls. Excellent.
Yes.
How about you, Jonathan? Final thoughts, how to find you? Any thought about gratitude for 2024?
Yeah, I'm actually grateful that I'm still alive. I I
Me
thought
too.
when I thought for many reasons that I'm not going to discuss in this live today. Yeah, I'm grateful that I'm still here and I can share my experience with many other humans. So I am absolutely grateful for that.
That's great.
I actually have a question. For example, you said that this particular client, he wanted to crash his car, but did he said like I want to go over a bridge or like on the
He wanted to
tree?
smash into the cement structure underneath the bridge abutment. You
All
know,
right.
column of cement. I did ask a
That
clarifying question. I said, have you ever driven across all the lanes of traffic? No. Have you ever just hard turned the wheel? No. So he hasn't actually done it. It's just a thought in
mm,
his head. So, because I'm going to hang up and dial, the suicide hotline, say, pull your car over to the side. We're going to conference call the 999 line or whatever. But it's just a rinse and repeat thought. He'd actually taken no action. So I
I
know
will.
dramatic
Yeah.
example. Sorry. Go ahead,
No,
Jonathan.
no. I was going to say, in my experience, that is it is one of those cases that it's extremely like coaching. It's extremely efficient because is not the kind of human that is like every 15 days attempt.
Mm,
Some humans attempt to
mm,
like do it like on regular basis or
mm,
like
mm,
once every like couple years.
mm,
Um, thank God I've never had to do that because I'm very efficient at that kind of stuff. I will choose the worst case scenario. But some humans are like they have different like perspective of how something is going to hurt them. They actually it's a clear example. When somebody tries to take their own life, they have such a distortioned perspective of real like reality that they think whatever they did is going to actually take their life
mm,
away, but it's not even close.
mm,
In most cases, that is repetitive. But
mm,
this one is like this one, for example, I will assure you that if he actually like works with like any of you guys,
mm,
uh, he will get those because those are it sounded like intrusive thoughts. So
mm.
he's like in the early stages of like taking care of it. Actually, smart human that he called you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, he's gonna be fine. Um, so yeah, I'm grateful that I'm still here.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, humans they can reach me a livedesign.org. Also on Instagram, Jonathan R Coaching.
Mhm.
Um, email jonathanrcoaching
Mhm.
at gmail.com, as well as TikTok is Jonathan R Coaching as well.
Very good. I like your TikToks in Spanish. I don't know enough Spanish to understand them fully, but I still enjoy them. So very good. Well, we're glad you're here too. And this is the year that you visited Isha, right? Didn't you come home?
I I came back on January of this year. Yes.
Yeah, so a bellwether year. Okay, Tanya, we want to know how to get a hold of you. And if you have any final thoughts on today and something you might be grateful for if you feel like sharing.
Yeah. Um, yeah, you can get a hold of me at newearthconsciousness.com.
Mhm.
It's probably the easiest.
Mhm.
Or um, I am on Instagram as well, New Earth Consciousness. I don't post in there very often, but
You
there,
have
and
a
I'm
contact
also,
form on your website so people could reach you there.
yeah. So you can just reach me that way. That's the easiest. Um, yeah, this is such a fascinating topic. I mean, mind is so mysterious, and there's just there's more than just this reality that we can see and feel.
Mhm.
I think one thing that was I wanted to mention, when we think of the mind, we tend to think, at least in the West, that it's all up here.
Mhm.
That,
Mhm.
oh, managing your mind, managing your thoughts, you just have to use your mental
Mhm.
capacities.
Mhm.
And I guess I just want to bring it back to that the body is also, uh, doing things like somatic therapy or, yoga or movement, anything like that. If you're just finding, wow, I'm having those intrusive thoughts to really, to come back to the body and just listening to the body. Well, what is the body needing? And that can also help bring in balance. And so I think that,
Mhm.
in spiritual development and with positive thinking, I think you kind of have to acknowledge, okay, what level am I at? If I'm just a kindergartner, then I'm not going to do like advanced spiritual techniques. I'm going to start with like the basics, like Dean was saying, okay, gratitude journal. Okay,
Mhm.
let's just start
Mhm.
there, and
Mhm.
then step by step, and just, developing that muscle. If it's a weakened muscle where, your mind is just out of control, like the guy that's
Mhm.
wanting to kill himself, uh, to just, yeah, start with the self-acceptance of where you are at now, and just be like, okay, this is where I'm at.
Mhm.
And I know my mind is thinking these thoughts that are intrusive and they're causing me a lot of suffering. But if you
Mhm.
can have the strength of awareness to know, okay, this is not me. This is actually not who I am.
Mhm.
And like Lean was saying, like taking that, creating some space
Mhm.
from it.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just yeah wanted to mention like the power of connecting with the body as well, and working through that stuff, and
Mhm.
using the body as a way to unwind. And I am very grateful that we had no fires this year. Every year is like holding our breath, like, are we gonna have to evacuate this year? Are there gonna be atrocious fires? And there were none this year, so that's
Yay.
nice.
Fire
So
free.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Well, we're blessed to have you on the roundtable today. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
And thanks
thanks.
for joining Alive Design. That's very exciting too. So, um, I appreciate everyone's thoughts about thought, and that we recognize people start in different places. The important thing is to get started. Start with something and then see the step after that, where it leads you. I think in our experience, it leads you to happiness, to growth, to more contentment, to a better understanding of knowing who you are. So begin somewhere, but begin. And Dean, final thoughts for you. Any
Yes.
gratitudes, and how do we find you?
Final thought. I think it is good for people in general to be slower to judge their experiences, including their mental experiences.
Mhm.
So if you think I should drive my car into this bridge abutment,
Mhm.
the person who's highly identified with his thoughts immediately assumes that's bad and I hate it and it's scary. Okay. But you might work on simply being slower to judge that and to say, I wonder if there is a positive point to this.
Mhm. Mhm.
Is this trying to help me in some way?
Mhm.
Right. And so to kind of take a little bit of a more, I guess, agnostic attitude toward the meaning of all of your experience, at least until you've explored it.
Mhm.
Right. And so again, it's about having space from that initial reaction.
Mhm.
And so this thing has happened. Well, let's just hold on, because there might, even if it appears bad on one level, there may be an opportunity there to
Mhm.
do something. And I think a lot of the times people have these very difficult or painful reactions to both circumstances and thoughts because they're so quick to kind of decide that it's bad,
Mhm.
as opposed to say, what's the opportunity in this experience?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, I this year's been a year of extreme change and growth, and I think one of the things I'm thankful that you, Myrna, have been there for it all. I'm really am deeply grateful to you,
Mhm.
and also I'm very grateful that I this year was really able to develop and sustain an ongoing journaling practice on a daily basis. That's been extremely helpful.
Mhm.
Um, to reach me, you can just do that at deanabbott.com or on Twitter at deanabbott.
Very good. Well, there's a great little book. It's like 10 years old now. Happy for No Reason.
Mhm.
And the very first time, what she did was you interview 100 people about something, and then you coalesce, put together, collate all their thoughts, and then you have a book. So she interviewed 100 people that other people said were the happiest people they knew. Please refer me to the happiest person you know. And then she interviewed them all, did 100. And so one of the key things about being happy is to not believe everything you think,
Mhm.
because some of those thoughts aren't even your own. And I remember hearing her say that. I saw her speak at a church. Don't believe everything you think. The thoughts aren't all my own. Really? And then I remembered there was a thought that would stay in my head in my mother's voice. Okay. I'll have you know, mothers out there, we have great impact. And I can hear my mother say like this, it must be nice to be 13 years old and know everything. So, some of the thoughts in our head have been inserted or installed by people in our lives. Other thoughts are just floating around the zeitgeist and then landed in our brain about I should do this or people who do that are bad. And we've never examined the thought. It just lives there now. We don't know who let it in, but we don't have to believe it. So don't believe all the thoughts because some of them are in fact not your own. So it's been great. I'm grateful for A Life Designed. Ron and I put this together over the last year, and we have curated the most amazing group of people, some of which are here right now. So we are blessed to be able to work with you all. And we're going to take 2 weeks off, start again in January. Everyone have a very happy holiday. Get a Christmas cookie if you can manage it. And thanks again, everyone, for being here. We'll see you all next time in January.
Bye.
Yep.
Thank
Good to
you.
see everyone. Yep.
Bye bye.